Anthony Bumble was a rich man who was as wealthy as he was proud. His riches were unmatched, and his power was feared by all. But despite his outward appearance of success, his heart was filled with malice. He treated those around him with disdain, believing himself to be above everyone, even God. Yet every Sunday he made sure to attend church, thinking this would keep him in God's good graces. One Sunday, as the church choir sang a beautiful hymn, Bumble found himself enchanted by the melody. The music was so lovely that he couldn't help but listen intently, but the words were in a language he didn't understand. Curious and a little annoyed, he leaned over to the person next to him. "What does that chorus mean?" Bumble asked, trying to keep his voice calm. The man beside him, eager to help, smiled and whispered, "It means he removes the mighty from the throne, and he lifts up the poor." Bumble's face twisted with anger. His blood boiled at the thought of the song's message. "How dare they sing such a thing in my presence?" he hissed, his voice low but filled with venom. "If only I had a gun, I'd make them pay for this insult." He clenched his fists, his knuckles white with rage. "Who is mightier than me in this town? God may have his kingdom in heaven, but I am a great man here on earth. No one can take that away from me." Up in the heavens, God listened to Bumble's words. With a gentle smile, he turned to one of his angels standing nearby. "Listen to the arrogance of this man," God said softly. "I have blessed him with wealth and power, yet he believes himself to be untouchable. But I will show him the truth. Go to him and take away everything that makes him so proud. But do not harm him. Let him see the error of his ways, and if he repents, restore him." The angel nodded and descended to the church where Bumble sat, still fuming. In an instant, the angel put Bumble into a deep sleep. As Bumble slumbered, the angel transformed his fine clothes into filthy rags and turned his gold jewelry into tarnished, worthless metal. The angel then took on Bumble's appearance, moving the real Anthony Bumble to a back pew, unnoticed by anyone. When the service ended, the angel, disguised as Bumble, left the church with the congregation, while the real Bumble remained asleep, locked inside. In the dead of night, Bumble awoke to total darkness. Confused and disoriented, he stumbled around, tripping over pews and knocking over furniture. Panic set in as he realized he was alone. Desperately, he groped for the door and began pounding on it with all his strength, shouting for help. The church guard, hearing the noise, rushed to see what was happening. But when he saw the ragged, filthy man before him, he recoiled in fear, thinking he was a madman. "Who are you?" the guard demanded, his voice trembling. "I am Anthony Bumble, the lord of this land." Bumbles howled back, his voice filled with desperation. But the guard only laughed, convinced the man was a lunatic. "Get away from here, you fool," the guard said, slamming the door shut. Bumble was stunned. He couldn't understand why he was being treated this way. He decided to return to his mansion, hoping to find some explanation. When he reached the gates of his mansion, he found them locked. "Open the gate!" he shouted, pounding on it with his fists. A guard on the other side called out, "Who are you?" "I am your master," Bumble shouted back, his voice cracking with frustration. The guards laughed, thinking the man was drunk or insane. "Go away, you fool," they said, ignoring his pleas. "I'll have your heads for this," Bumble bellowed, but his threats were met with more laughter. Exhausted and confused, Bumble slumped against the gate, spending the cold night shivering outside his own home. When morning came, the guards finally allowed him into the mansion, dragging him before Bumble, who was, of course, the angel in disguise. The angel looked at the pitiful figure before him with a mixture of pity and amusement. "This poor man must be a jester," the angel said, a slight smile playing on his lips. Give him clean clothes and let him stay in the servants' quarters." And so Bumble was given a small room in the servants' quarters and was made a jester, forced every day to entertain the man who now sat on his throne. Days turned into weeks, and Bumble's life was filled with misery and reflection. He realized how foolish and arrogant he had been, and his heart began to change. One Saturday, as he scrubbed the floors of the mansion, the weight of his mistakes finally overwhelmed him. He fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face. "God, I see now how wrong I've been," he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. "I was blinded by my pride and arrogance. Please, forgive me." The next morning, he was the first to arrive at the church, even before the bells rang. He knelt at the altar, pouring out his heart in prayer. When the service began and the choir sang the familiar hymn, he joined in, singing louder than anyone else. He removes the mighty from the throne, and he lifts up the poor. His voice echoed through the church, causing the congregation to turn and stare, but he didn't care. "Next week I'll sing even louder," he whispered to the person next to him, a small smile on his face. After the service, Bumble stayed behind, kneeling at the altar for a long time, praying for forgiveness. When he finally returned to the mansion, the angel, still in disguise, sent for him. In the enormous living room, the angel dismissed everyone else, leaving Bumble alone. The room grew dark, and Bumble's heart pounded in his chest. He didn't know what was coming, but he knew it was something profound. Suddenly, the room was filled with the sound of marching feet, and the walls and floor shook. A powerful wind swept through the room, even though all the doors and windows were shut tight. Then, just as suddenly as it had started, everything went quiet, and the room was flooded with brilliant light. Bumble looked up and saw the angel floating above him, radiant and majestic, his eyes like sapphires. Overcome with fear, Bumble fell to the ground, covering his face. "I am one of the 7 angels who stand before God," the angel said, his voice echoing through the room. "You were given power and wealth, but you became proud and forgot that all you had was given to you by God. He ordered me to humble you until you repented. Now that you have found wisdom, I restore you to your throne. But remember, if you fail to deal with everyone else with humility and justice, you will lose everything again." With that, the angel vanished, and Bumble found himself once more dressed in his rich clothes as he had been before. But his heart was forever changed, and he related with all with humility and kindness, always remembering the lesson he had learned. From that day on, Anthony Bumble was known not for his wealth or power, but for his wisdom and humility. And every Sunday, his voice was the loudest in the church, singing praises to the God who had taught him the most important lesson of his life.